Hello students, my name is Ahmad Zafar. Today I'm going to present Adrian Ritz's famous poem Aunt Jennifer's Tiger. Before we proceed, let us learn something about the poet and what she says about the present poem. Adrienne Rich, she is an American poet and an essayist. She is one of the most widely read and influenced poets of the second half of the 20th century. She talks about a woman's experiences in her married life. She has tried to explore the inner feelings of a woman who is living under the dominance of men. Let's proceed. Now, dear students, when you have a look at the title of the poem, the first question which hammers into your conscious mind: who exactly Aunt Jennifer is? Who exactly Aunt Jennifer is? Let me tell you, Aunt Jennifer is neither my aunt nor yours. Then who she is? Actually, Aunt Jennifer is any woman who has fallen prey to unjust, unfair, and inhuman treatment in a male-dominant world. Now your query is solved. So in this way, we have so many Aunt Jennifers in this world. Now, another question that strikes your mind: who are the tigers? Did Aunt Jennifer have tigers as pet? No, this is not possible. A tiger is not a pet animal. Actually, here tigers represent the needlework tapestry of Aunt Jennifer. Be careful. Here tigers represent the needlework tapestry of Aunt Jennifer. They are not the real tigers. She designed a few tigers on a piece of screen. It might be any tablecloth, wall hanging, or any other piece or panel. So she designed a few tigers on a piece of screen and standing under a tree. Now, I think you don't have an iota of doubt about the tigers of Aunt Jennifer. Let me bring home some more points. Her needlework tapestry does not only depict a few tigers standing under a tree, but also a few men standing at a distance. Okay, these points must be kept in your mind. Now, why did she design only tigers? Why did she design only tigers? One more question gripped your attention now. Let me answer. Actually, Aunt Jennifer wanted to live a life as boldly, fearlessly, and elegantly as that of a tiger. But alas, the circumstances she underwent after her marriage was quite contrary to what she wished for. Her desires remained suppressed. That is why, in order to give a wing to her suppressed desires, or you can say suppressed emotions, she designed a few tigers on a panel. Her depiction was actually an exhibition of her suppressed emotions. Now, I think you have understood. Let us discuss the theme of the poem. Dear students, after learning about Aunt Jennifer and her tigers, we now come to a conclusion that the most dominating theme of the poem is expression of suppressed desires. Or you can say exhibition of suppressed desires, or you can say exhibition of suppressed emotions. This is one of the most dominating themes of the poem. Introduction to the poem. Now, let me present a little bit introduction to the poem. Aunt Jennifer's Tiger. Aunt Jennifer's Tigers is a poem by Adrienne Rich illustrating her feminist concerns. Yes, this point must be remembered. This poem actually illustrates her feminist concerns. In the male-dominant world, a woman of a time was only supposed to be a dutiful homemaker. This poem, through the word of Aunt Jennifer, tells us about her inner desire to free herself from the clutches of abusive marriage and patriarchal society. Now please lend me your ears and be very attentive because I am going to present the gist of the poem. The poet expresses the inner feelings of a woman called Aunt Jennifer. Called Aunt Jennifer. The aunt is embroidering a motif comprising of energetic, fearless tigers moving freely around the bright greenery, in the forest, in green forest. She is living a life of submissiveness to her husband, or you can say to the command of her husband. Her acts are dominated by him and she fears him constantly. This pattern of the free and fearless tigers reflects her inner desire to live a free and fearless life. The tigers are graceful, elegant, and bright, and Aunt Jennifer's fingers tremble as she embroiders. When she does the work of embroidery, her fingers tremble. She is old but still fears her husband. She does not enjoy the freedom to do anything as per her wish. She is scared doing the embroidery too and fears his wrath. His wrath means the anger of her husband. Since the day she got married, she has been fulfilling the demands of her husband. The wedding ring on her hand is a constant reminder that she belongs to her husband. The burden of the demanding marriage has exhausted her. The torment will not end until death. Even after her death, the ring will remain on her hand and she will never be free. On the other hand, the tigers that she is embroidering will continue to move around freely forever and ever. Her desire of freedom and fearlessness will live on through her tigers. Will live on. This point must be emphasized that her desire of freedom and fearlessness will live on through her tigers. Now lend me all your ears because I am going to present the explanation of each and every stanza. I'll also discuss the poetic devices and the difficult words. So be very attentive and lend me all your ears. I'm going to read out the first stanza, then I'll be explaining as well as I'll describe just difficult words and poetic devices. First stanza. Aunt Jennifer's tigers prance across a screen. Bright topaz, denizens of a world of green. They do not fear the man beneath the tree. They pace in sleek, chivalric certainty. Be very careful, the word chivalric is to be pronounced as chivalric. Okay, just look at the first line. Aunt Jennifer's tigers prance across a screen. Prance. Prance means to jump, to hop. Here actually The poet wants to say that the tigers are moving carelessly, freely, and fearlessly. Or you can say they're walking elegantly in the forest, fearlessly and freely. And prance, the word prance is actually a human attribute. It is mostly ascribed with human being, but here it has been used for tigers. So we can say tigers of Aunt Jennifer have been personified over here. So the poetic device in the first line is personification, because tigers have been personified by the word prance. Okay, so the poetic device in the first line is personification. Aunt Jennifer's tigers prance across the screen means the tigers of Aunt Jennifer's are moving freely, carelessly, majestically across the screen. Just be careful, they are not the living tigers, but they seem to be real. She has designed in such a beautiful way that they look to be real tigers. Okay, so the tigers of Aunt Jennifer's are walking carelessly, freely, or elegantly, or you can say majestically on a piece of screen. Second line, bright topaz, denizens of a world of green. Just be very careful. The poet has compared the tigers of Aunt Jennifer to bright topaz. You know, topaz is a shiny crystal. Topaz is a shiny crystal, and the tigers have been compared to topaz. And we know that here she is making a direct comparison. She is directly comparing tigers to bright topaz. So whenever we have direct comparison, we call it metaphor. So the poetic device in the second line is metaphor. Okay, let me tell you the difference between simile and metaphor. In simile, what exactly we do, a comparison is made between two objects using the word of comparison. For example, so, like, as. For example, mm, uh, for example, it is as bright as milk. Sorry, it is as white as milk. It is as white as milk. So here we find simile, and we can say uh, he is the Arjun of the hour. Here we are making direct comparison. So here we find metaphor. Just keep in mind, whenever a comparison is made between two objects without using any comparison word, or we can say when direct comparison is made, we call it metaphor. So here the poetic device is actually metaphor, because tigers have directly been compared to bright topaz. Bright topaz, denizens of a world of green. Denizens means dwellers, inhabitants. World of green means forest, means the tigers of Aunt Jennifer's are as bright as topaz. They are the dwellers of forest. They live in forest. The tigers of Aunt Jennifer's are as bright as topaz. They live in a forest, or they are the dwellers of forest. World of green means forest. They now look at the third line. They do not fear the man beneath the tree. Yes, very, very noteworthy, and just be very attentive. As I told you, in the embroidery work of Aunt Jennifer, she designed a few tigers as well as a few men standing at a distance. So they do not fear the man beneath the tree. Actually, the men who are standing beneath the tree, the tigers are not scared of them. Why? But the question arises, why? Why tigers are not scared of the men who are standing beneath the tree? Actually, the poet wants to highlight that actually these are not the men belonging to male dominating society. These are not the kind of men who torture women. They are good human beings. So that is why the tigers are not scared of these men. These men means these men were standing beneath the tree, under the tree. So that is why the tigers are not scared of the men who were standing under the tree. Now, fourth line, they pace in sleek chivalric certainty. Pace means move, sleek means smoothly, Chivalric means majestically, elegantly, or gracefully. Okay, and the tigers of Aunt Jennifer's are moving majestically, smoothly, and fearlessly in the forest. They don't have any sort of fear. They are fearless and they are free to do anything. They have got freedom to do anything. They don't have any sort of fear and they are moving freely, elegantly, and gracefully in the forest. Here, chivalric also connotes one meaning because chivalric actually in ancient time, some kings would employ some soldiers whose whose jobs were to look after the security of women. So this chivalric, and they were called chivalry. So that is why the word chivalric connotes that particular incident. Okay, so it was all about the first stanza. Let us just to recap about the explanation of the first stanza. Actually, the poet is describing a lady whom she addresses as Aunt Jennifer. She says that Aunt Jennifer is doing embroidery on a piece of cloth, which could be a tablecloth or a wall hanging. She has designed it with beautiful tigers which are running fearlessly in the green forest. She has described her beauty by comparing them with a precious yellow stone known as topaz. She says that they appear bright yellow in the green backdrop of the forest. They are fearless and they are not affected by the presence of men. Here we can sense the contrast of behavior between the tigers and on. Just be very attentive. Here we can sense the contrast of behavior between the tigers and aunt. Though the tigers designed by her are fearless, but she herself is afraid of her husband. Further, the poet says that the tigers are proud and fearless citizens of the forest. They are very shiny and elegant. Shiny and elegant. All right. Now let me read out the second stanza and then I'll be explaining. Okay. Aunt Jennifer's fingers, fluttering through her wool, find even the ivory needle hard to pull. The massive weight of Uncle's wedding band sits heavily upon Aunt Jennifer's hand. Just look at the first line. Aunt Jennifer's fingers fluttering through her wool. Flutter means to vibrate, to quiver. To vibrate, to quiver. Again, just listen very carefully. Aunt Jennifer's fingers fluttering through her wool means the moment Aunt Jennifer does the work of embroidery. The moment she uses needle which is made up of ivory and wool, okay, to do her embroidery work, to do her needlework capacity, what exactly happens? Her fingers flutter. Her fingers flutter. Aunt Jennifer's finger fluttering through her wool means her fingers actually vibrate. Her fingers actually quiver. Find even the ivory needle hard to pull, and in that situation it becomes very difficult for Aunt Jennifer to pull the needle through the piece of cloth. To pull the needle through the piece of cloth. Now the question arises. Why do the fingers of Aunt Jennifer flutter? It does not happen every time. Sometimes it happens when she sits to do the needle work. Her fingers flutter and it becomes difficult for her to pull the needle through the wool or through the piece of cloth. Why this happens? The massive weight of Uncle's wedding band sits heavily upon Aunt Jennifer's hand. Why? Because here wedding band actually means wedding ring. Actually, Aunt Jennifer is wearing the ring which was given to her by her husband. Okay, so the moment she has a look at the ring, she recollect all the tortures, all the sufferings, all the problems inflicted upon her. All the suffering, she recollects all the sufferings, problems, and infliction inflicted upon her. So that is why the moment she recollects all the tortures of the past, okay, she becomes quite distressed. She becomes quite tensed, and in that situation, it becomes very difficult for Aunt Jennifer to pull the needle through the wool or through the piece of cloth. Means as long as the ring of Uncle Jennifer means the husband of Aunt Jennifer, Uncle Jennifer remains in the finger of Aunt Jennifer, she would not be able to take a sigh of relief. Sigh of relief. Okay, let us recap. What does the poet want? What does the poet want to tell us? Actually, see, here the poet describes the fear of Aunt Jennifer towards her husband. The poet describes the fear of Aunt Jennifer towards her husband. She says that while she is doing embroidery, her fingers are quivering, I mean shaking, with fear of her husband. Her husband doesn't approve of her body, her husband doesn't approve of her hobby of embroidery. Her husband does not approve of her hobby of embroidery. Therefore, she trembles while she is embroidering the piece of cloth. It has become difficult for her to pull her needle up and down. Then she describes the wedding ring which was given by uncle to Aunt Jennifer on their wedding day. She says that it is a kind of burden for her to wear this ring. She has been tortured by her husband so much that the wedding ring, which could have been a beautiful gift for her, seems like a burden to her. She has faced so many difficulties in her married life that the little ring is described as a heavy band on her trembling fingers. This means that the ring is associated with some bad experiences in the form of torture she has faced because of her husband's dominating behavior. Dominating behavior. All right. Now, let us learn about the poetic devices. Just look at the first line. Aunt Jennifer's fingers fluttering through her wool. Let me tell you actually. Okay, actually speaking, it is not only her fingers which flutter. The entire body of Aunt Jennifer was actually quivering, was actually shaking. Not only the fingers were shaking, but the entire body was shaking. But the poet has used only finger. Okay. So actually here fingers represent the entire body. So there is a poetic devices. In this poetic devices, using one part, the entire part is described. So this poetic devices is called metonymy. metonymy, metonymy. So here fingers actually represent the entire body. Not only the fingers of Aunt Jennifer were fluttering, but the entire body was fluttering. So The poetic device is metonymy, metonymy, metonymy. All right. And see, the massive weight of uncle's wedding band. Massive weight. Massive weight. Again, see, the ring has been compared to the weight of the circumstances, and this is again a direct comparison. So the poetic device is metaphor. Okay, the massive weight of uncle's wedding band. Wedding band actually represents marriage. And again, I would like to draw your attention to a poetic device. In this poetic device, when we use one thing to represent another, for example, sometimes we say the decision has been taken by a bench. So here bench actually refers to the group of judges, I mean jury members. So here actually a wedding band refers to the marriage of Aunt Jennifer. This poetic device is called synecdoche. This is called synecdoche, synecdoche, synecdoche. This poetic device is called synecdoche. All right. So we found two main poetic devices in the second stanza. The first is metonymy and the second is synecdoche, and one more, that is metaphor, because the ring has been compared to the weight of the circumstances, and it is a direct comparison. So the poetic device is metaphor also in the third line. Okay. Now I'm going to read out the third and the last stanza. Okay. When aunt is dead, her terrified hands will lie, still ringed with all deals she was mastered by. The tigers in the panel that she made will go on prancing proud and unafraid. Look at the first line of the third stanza. When aunt is dead, her terrified hands will lie, still ringed with the ordeal she was mastered by. Actually, the poet wants to say that Aunt Jennifer will not be able to get rid of her problems even after her death. Why? Because even when she dies, the ring will remain in her finger. Even she dies, the ring which was given to her by Uncle Jennifer will remain in her finger. And she would be buried with the same ring. So as long as the ring remains in the finger of Aunt Jennifer, she would never be able to get rid of the problems and affliction. Okay. So the problems, ordeal means difficulties, problems, and tough exam. Even after she dies, the problems and infliction would encircle around her dead body. Means, in a simple language, the poet wants to say that she won't be able to get rid of the problems of a married life even after her death. The tigers in the panel that she made will go on prancing proud and unafraid. But the tiger she has made on the panel will keep on moving proud and unafraid, because the tigers are actually the exhibition of a suppressed emotion. Let us recap once again what does the poet actually want to bring home. Actually, the poet says that one can easily sense Aunt's desire for freedom and fearlessness through her design of tigers. It is clear actually. Further, she says that it is not possible for Aunt to achieve this freedom during her lifetime. She will attain it only after her death, but Here also the irony of her life is that still still she will be tied up with the shackles in the form of her husband's wedding ring. Just let me repeat this line. This is very, very important. Actually, mean the poet says that it is not possible for Anne to achieve this freedom during her lifetime. She will attain it only after her death. But here also the irony of her life is that still she will be tied up with the shackles in the form of her husband's wedding ring. She will be tied up with the shackles which is in the form of her husband's wedding ring. Actually, the wedding ring of husband is not the ring, it is like a shackles for Aunt Jennifer. And she is tied up with the shackles. The ring was the sole proof of the tortures which she had faced from her husband. On the other hand, there are the tigers designed by Aunt Jennifer, which will always depict her desire of living a fearless life by jumping proudly and bravely on the piece of cloth. On the piece of cloth. All right. It was all about the explanation of the three stanzas of Aunt Jennifer. All right. Okay, students, I hope you have liked my lecture. Okay, till then, goodbye.